Hey everyone, I don't expect anyone to be joining my 1:48 in the morning Mountain Time stream. I got my camera straightened out. Really sorry that the last video had like that watermark across it. I had to like do all kinds of restoring my purchases on the phone because that was like a pro app that I purchased. It's fixed now. But since that, so I wanted to clarify and apologize for that. And there's always things you realize you forgot to say or mention, and I did some clarification. I spoke with Wayne. Go figure, I spoke with my husband. He hardly ever gets to talk to me anymore, and he confirmed, like, he's not officially a Mises member. So Colorado, I don't even know if the whole board is Mises, but I think so, except for Wayne. But I'm not even sure of that because that's just not an issue here. Oregon, I have no freaking idea of the makeup of their board. Arizona, the chair is definitely not Mises. And I think the board's pretty evenly split, but I don't know. Washington, I know the chair is Mises. Not sure about the makeup of the rest of the board. Nevada, I think, is very similar to Colorado. It's probably the whole board as Mises. So already we see there's misrepresentations here. The overriding principle in the regional formation wasn't caucus. Now, obviously, if you're friendly to the majority point of view within your little region there, that's generally probably going to fall upon caucus lines, but it wasn't a caucus thing. If anything, it was a just don't be hostile thing. There's a difference between officially being a Mises member and not being anti-Mises. Most of the party is neutral. That's just the facts. And I can only speak for myself that I know when I was allowed to give input, I don't care what somebody's caucus affiliation is. I do care if they're hostile to what I think is the movement that's growing this party. But whether or not they consider themselves a member of that, I don't care, as long as they're not hostile. What I care is that people are principled and have integrity. So I wanted to clarify that as well, at least for me, that as I've once said, and I use the word radical, not in a caucus way. Give me one really good, principled committed moderate with integrity over 10 unprincipled radicals. It's about principles to me. And I'm sure there are some exceptions, probably even amongst my friends list. But in general, the people that are like completely hostile to Mises, and I can think of a few exceptions on my friends list, actually. So if you're one of those friends, I'm probably thinking of you. But generally speaking, the people who are like just deranged hostile, to me, that's like a good filter for somebody who's just not acting principled when you just lose your crap over this stuff. So I hope that clarified things as well. But I really did want to apologize for the watermark. That was super, super distracting. But I hope that information was useful. Because as I said in a video the other night, and I know I'm kind of using YouTube more like Twitch, where you just ramble on forever. Well, that's my style. As I said in a stream yesterday, the apple carts in this party are getting disrupted. Like I like to joke, and I'll explain it again in a minute, that I have weaponized autism. I actually do have autism, not self-diagnosed, not that I think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but officially diagnosed. So I joke, I have weaponized autism. Things like YouTube and social media that bring to light shady crap that's going on in the party is, and I'm using this in quotes sarcastically, weaponized populism, just like I have weaponized autism. And what I mean by that is that for too long, the only people who knew what was going on was the privileged few in power who would use their position of privilege to control the narrative. The minute you start getting outspoken people like me, and it's not just me, there are other equally outspoken people, some of them who disagree with me radically. But the minute you get your just members bringing this information out to the averaged, unwashed masses of the membership, it changes the whole dynamic. So if anyone is ever wondering what my motivation is, that's what it is. Empowering people with information. How you interpret that information and what you do with it is up to you. Obviously, I hope you agree with me, but you don't have to. Once you have the information, you can make your own decision. But for far too long in this party, there really has been a separation between the elites and the members. And I'm kicking that separation down. That shouldn't exist. And if you don't believe that's one of the reasons I got removed, you're fooling yourself. I refused to circle the wagons. The LNC was right at all costs, and you don't tell the members when there's bad shit going on. I don't operate that way. And it actually hasn't been necessary, except for once COVID hit. Everyone lost their minds. As I said, the 2016 through mid-2019 LNC, we had our spats, but it was very functional and very peaceful. And I didn't have to go on, big exposés or anything like that. That's really not my thing. And God, I am so looking forward to the party returning to that, where we can have our disagreements, but it's just good faith disagreements. It's not corruption. It's not Machiavellianism. It's not politics as usual. I got super triggered by something said in my last chat when it was like, well, that's par for the course. And I'm not criticizing the person that said that because they're right. It is par for the course. Can we change the course and change the par, please? We're supposed to be the party of principle. That's my goal for after Reno. The new LNC is not going to agree on everything. But if we're operating from principle, we will be functional. And I think that's what we all want. And part of the problem that I see, unfortunately, this is human nature. It's the out of sight, out of mind thing, where it's like, if I don't see it, it doesn't exist. You're bringing to my attention all this bad stuff. It's your fault. The classic shoot the messenger. Don't do that. I know ignorance is bliss, but it's also ignorance. Keep track of what is going on. All of this maneuvering, some of it is just politics, and I hate politics anyway. And I guess in that sense, it's par for course. But this misrepresenting people and things like that, that should never be par for course in the party of principle. But on a positive note, I think there is a possibility after Reno with a shakeup in leadership for the LP to shock the system in a good way. Well, they won't think it's a good way, the system, the establishment. But we can live up to our promise. And maybe I'm just a dreamer. But I think it can happen. If you share that, if you want to see libertarianism turn the world upside down in a good way, please, I implore you, get to convention. I think we're on the cusp of potential greatness. If you'll allow me to be a little cheesy, the expression, it's always darkest before the dawn, I think is true here. We are seeing, to me, it's objectively true, one of the worst LNCs, if not the worst LNC in the history of this party. And they have brought us now to the brink of insolvency, or however is the correct economic term for we be broke. It's wake-up call time, people. Not only is our messaging not changing the world. Half of the time, and it's funny because people accuse Mises supporters of being closet Republicans. My complaint is a lot of our current messaging is indistinguishable from certain Republican messaging. We'll talk about school vouchers. You want to know what? So do the Republicans. How about we talk about our actual platform, which is school vouchers is a great first step to getting the government out of education. We'll talk about legalizing weed. You want to know what? Even many Republicans are talking about that today. How about talk about our actual platform, which is get rid of all drug laws? It's so funny that the accusation is, oh, closet Republicans. I don't hear any Republicans say that. You know, we had our party chair say in the State of the Union address that sanctions against Russia were reasonable. Republicans say that. No, they're not. And I know in a lot of these videos leading up to Reno, I'm going to keep repeating myself. But I'm trying to find fellow travelers. I firmly believe that we need to openly reject the idea that there's a left-right paradigm, because there isn't. There might have been at one time, but there isn't. We need to completely reframe the argument from authoritarianism versus libertarianism. That's a winning argument. Your average Joe on the street understands that. And when you do that, something I think we don't understand is a lot of times, like, I'm Republican because my dad's Republican, my whole family's Republican. And when you just attack the duopoly or the Republicans by name, you're almost attacking their tribe. And you need to come at it from a different way and reframe the issue in words that doesn't present it that way. It's authoritarianism, of which exists in both the Republicans and the Democrats, versus libertarianism, which is us. So I think we need to stop using the words left and right. I also think we ought to really just stop even mentioning those other two. You know how I once said, kind of jokingly, but I do mean it, that no one is a libertarian. And I don't mean that in the jokey way that I'm the only true libertarian. The way I mean it is people are much more complex than walking political ideologies. Those of you who know me have heard me say this a million times. They're much more complex than that. So deal with ideas. This idea is libertarian. You see how that depersonalizes everything? And people will be more receptive because they don't feel like you're attacking their identity. I think that's really important. I don't know how I got from Chris Lucchini absolutely misleading the region to this topic. I guess I went from talking about the bad which can be freaking depressing, to talking about the future. Because that's what I want to concentrate on. But unfortunately, someone's got to counter the misinformation campaign that is going on in Region 1. And it makes me truly sad that happens as a former Region 1 representative, because I'm still like super, super fond of all of those states. But I got asked a question on my last video, like, well, isn't it true that the other 7 states have nowhere to go? No, that's not true. Like, please, everyone. And this person wasn't saying it to be, it's a friend of mine. Everything is so tense right now. If you step back and you get a broader view of party history, you will realize that regions realign. It's in our bylaws. Like, it's expected to happen. Like, treating it like there's some betrayal, like you're getting divorced or something, is unhealthy. Regions realign. That's why you have to sign a new regional agreement every 2 years. That's why regions are not hard coded in the bylaws. It's because they are supposed to realign. That is healthy. So what about the other 7 states of Region 1? I'm just going to throw out some ideas here. It's not the only solution. But I'm going to say what I said in a comment in the other video. Colorado, for one thing, at least the former board when I was on it, did not want to be in a region with New Mexico. Not because we have anything against New Mexico. I have a lot of friends in New Mexico. But it's because New Mexico is controlled by Chris Lucchini. Unfortunately, I feel bad for my friends in New Mexico who have kvetched to me about this situation. But we have to do what's best for Colorado, and being under Lucchini's thumb was not best for Colorado. I never thought New Mexico was a good fit for Region 1, and I told Lucchini that in 2018. I could probably find those emails, and you guys will see how ruthlessly consistent I am. I think New Mexico actually is a really good fit with Region 7. And Lucchini won't be able to dominate anybody in Region 7 because you got Texas that pretty much controls Region 7. And Lucchini ain't going to dominate Texas. I said this to Fina, who's one of my dear friends. I don't think she agrees with me, but this is just my thoughts. And historically, this has happened multiple times. I think Hawaii is a very good fit with the region that Florida is in. And historically, Hawaii's very often been in a region with Florida. I have heard through the grapevine, I have not confirmed this with anyone in this state, that Utah wishes to remain regionless. So that now leaves Alaska. I personally, I can't speak for any of the region chairs. I personally would like to see Alaska join the 5 states. And it's funny because from what I understand, it's definitely not a Mises board. But I've seen the way Alaska has voted on issues in the past, and I agree with them. Funny, I thought this was just supposed to be a Mises region. So who does that leave? Kansas. Kansas has already said last year that they felt they were a better fit with Region 6. And no one got all ass mad about that. So we already knew Kansas didn't want to stay part of Region 1. So that now just leaves Montana and Wyoming. Wyoming right now is functionally not an affiliate. People go to their website, you can't find their bylaws. There's no join button. They were given a platform committee appointment and never appointed anybody. It seems like Wyoming is just basically the Frontier Project, and that's fine. Let them be the Frontier Project. That means they probably don't give a crap about being in a region. So who does that then leave? Montana. It's my understanding, at least amongst some of the other people of the 5, we think Montana probably would be a good fit. So look, I just took care of the problem in 5 minutes or less. This panic that I know, Chuck, I could talk. I know you told me I should just go on Twitch, and I should. So this panic that Lucchini has induced is nonsense. I just gave a workable solution in 5 minutes. And there are many other workable solutions. Many others. I'm just really resentful at how those 5 states were demonized. I guess I'm just really ass mad about that. I don't know why. It's just, I guess Colorado has pretty much felt abused by Lucchini for the past 2 years, and I'm just over it. Like, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. You're supposed to still be representing these 5 states, even though we have signed another agreement that after convention, au revoir, right now, he's still supposed to be our representative. You don't go around demonizing the states you're still supposed to be representing. I am just monumentally tired at this point of baby games. Of baby games. And I love it when Chuck's in my streams because I think he and I are a real good example of people who, over the past year, have fundamentally disagreed, yet remain friends, and don't have to go around making up shit. I'm sure Chuck has plenty of criticisms against me, which, I'm not perfect, have validity. He doesn't need to make up shit. I don't need to make up shit. He knows I don't like his JC decisions. Oh, well, welcome to humanity. Anyway, I'm going to close. I do need to get to bed. I'm sure you already learned from my other streams, Chuck. You guys got another appeal coming. It's an open secret now. So I've got shit to do. We're making you earn your non-money. We're making you earn your zero pay. Chuck, I vote right now to give you a raise of 100 times. Your last statement is really interesting to me. I'm going to have to think about that. I do think you and I 99% of the time agree on what's right and just. We obviously disagree on what the bylaws allow. Um, but that last statement of yours there is very interesting. I don't think the bylaws always align with just outcomes. Here's my question to you, just to give you some food for thought. I'm not trying to influence um, any future decisions. I'm really not. This is more of a philosophical discussion. As libertarians, and this is why I call myself, in a way, a Roberts heretic, um, because I do believe in principles of equity above all. I view, and I've changed over time. Like if you point out, oh, you wouldn't have said that 5 years ago, you're absolutely right. We all evolve. Um, I kind of view it in the same way that I view the laws of this country, that we have a duty to disobey unjust laws. Now, of course, those laws weren't created by libertarians, so they were never intended to be just to begin with. I do think our bylaws, the intent behind them is to be just. And when it seems like a hyper literal interpretation leads to an unjust outcome, I just don't think that could be possibly correct because that's unlibertarian. I probably didn't explain that well, but I think you got the gist of where I'm coming from. Because libertarians wrote these, to me, the overriding interpretive principle isn't Roberts. It isn't the principles of interpretation in Roberts, though I think those principles are very important. I've cited them. I think the overriding interpretive principle is libertarianism. And I mean, I made that argument in my case. I don't think any interpretation of the bylaws that denies due process can possibly be correct because that's anti-libertarian. And I do think there's time before convention to hear an appeal. Um, I also think it's equally likely that you won't. Um, but let me give you an argument for that. Earlier, was it today or was it last night? And by the way, this is an open invitation to any group. When it comes to parliamentary stuff, I think Chuck will testify to this, and I think any fair-minded person will testify to this. When it comes to parliamentary stuff, like when I'm retained as a parliamentarian, I'm not a partisan. And I think I proved that in Pennsylvania, not this year, I did it this year, but the year before when I sided with Steve Sheets on multiple issues against Mises Caucus people because I thought Steve was right. And what I thought was so funny with this Pennsylvania convention, and I don't know if you caught this, Chuck. I know you're not on social media, but I don't even know if you caught this in the convention. And I keep getting confused between Rhinesmith and Reinhardt. The guy who was vice chair, Aaron R. in Pennsylvania. When Ken Krawcheck asked me to be co-parliamentarian, Aaron R., I just get so confused because there's an Adam R. Wright and an Aaron R. You know who I mean? The guy who used to be vice chair. Immediately went on Facebook and said, and the Mises people just replaced our convention parliamentarian with somebody who is going to rubber stamp everything Michael Heiss wants. As you know, I didn't replace the parliamentarian you guys already had. We were co-parliamentarians. But I don't know if you caught this. What was one of my first acts that I did once I was given that appointment? Michael Heiss got up and made a motion, and I didn't realize there was a hot mic. I tried to just whisper in the chair's ear, but apparently the mic in front of me was very hot. And what was the first thing I did when I was made co-parliamentarian? Michael Heiss was at the microphone, and I said to the chair, after Michael made his motion, Ken, that motion is completely out of order. So I thought that was hilarious because, like, within minutes of Adam Reinhardt making that statement, my very first act was to tell Ken Krawcheck that the motion that Michael Heiss was making was completely out of order because I don't rubber stamp anything. There's two reasons why. One is personal ethics, but the second is now that I got my registered parliamentarian certification, I have an ethical duty. I'm not going to risk my certification for anybody. Even the Ginger Jesus. It's not 4:30 here. I'm in mountain time, Justin. Why are you up? So I always just thought that was funny. But on the appeal thing, I think there is time. Of course, I'm not on the JC. I'm glad I'm not on the JC, by the way. God, this was such a rabbit trail. Okay, so yesterday I was explaining to a Mises group just simply how our convention rules work. My offer to explain that is open to any group. I don't care who you are or what side you are on. To me, everyone benefits when everyone knows the rules. So if there's any group out there that wants me to explain, particularly I was explaining how platform debate and voting goes because it's different from Roberts. You know, we have that convention rule on it. That's a little bizarre. And actually, it's really bizarre, Chuck, that the platform section is like this and gives all these rules, and the bylaws section for debating is like this. It was bizarre to me. Like that never struck me until I was explaining it to a group of people. But anyway, I'll explain that to anyone because we all benefit when people know the rules. Less time is wasted. So a bunch of Mises haters can invite me to go explain the rules to them, and I'll gladly do it because less time gets wasted when people know what the rules are. Totally neutral when it comes to that. I don't even know where I was going with this because now I'm so freaking tired. Oh, the appeal. So when I was explaining the rules, I mean, I know you know this, but a lot of people don't realize that you guys are supposed to like be in session at convention because people can appeal platform planks and resolutions. So you're like supposed to be in session. And I know Mary's not even gonna be there. So, like, in my own mind, I was just curious, like, are you gonna do that over Zoom, like hybrid? Like, I don't know. It's none of my business. I don't think any of our platform planks are gonna get appealed. The platform committee planks are completely orthodox, but you never know, um, what people will propose from the floor. We had this lady in Colorado who wanted to put this was years ago, in our platform that we would, hang and castrate rapists on the public square. I mean, obviously, if somebody now, Chuck, I just made it my goal to call you guys up in convention. No, I'm just joking. Um, but because that rule though kind of made me think there is time to decide this if there's a will. I'm not saying necessarily even a will on your part. There's got to be a will for all the parties concerned. Um, and I'm speaking in generalities because still writing the appeal, and I even you don't know what the grounds are. We've kept it very close to the chest, and I intend to keep it that way until it's actually out. I don't want people anticipating. Um, but actually, if an appeal's written up and there are replies, I actually think the convention can decide. You might disagree with that, but I actually think it can. So one way or another, I think it can be decided by Reno. Obviously, the convention might disagree with me because I'm finding out. I guess I'm a bit unorthodox in some of my interpretations. Um, but I do agree with you, Chuck, that if the bylaws appear to be unjust, they should be, I'm using Robert's terminology now, they should be amended as soon as practicable. However, even though I do agree with you that they should be amended as soon as practicable, and I love the difference between practical and practicable, but I also don't think an unjust interpretation can possibly be the right one. And I think that's where you and I fundamentally differ. All right. Chuck says, I'm looking forward to after convention when I could talk about controversial things without holding my tongue. Yeah, I'm sure you are. I don't think well, I don't want to say that because, like, who knows what the future holds. But the me right now, I couldn't do it. Maybe the me 5 years from now could. I like talking too much. So, God bless you. I don't think I could do it. All right. I probably should get to sleep so I can write the appeal. I'm not the only one writing it though, so it's not just all up to me. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go now. I just did want to explain some of that Region 1 stuff that I thought maybe I was a bit unclear on because I re-listened to part of it and I know some of my opposition listen to every word I say to pick it apart, and it's not a pleasant way to live. And I know they'll go, so she's saying Mises wasn't a consideration at all? No, that's not what I was saying. What I was saying is it's not a primary consideration. And pro-Mises isn't the same as not being anti-Mises. Not being anti-Mises was definitely a consideration. Because we just won't we want a region that gets along. You don't have to be pro-Mises. But if you've got Mises derangement syndrome, it's not a good fit. So I did want to clarify that because I know some people will go, see, she wasn't telling the truth. She was saying Mises wasn't a consideration at all. Nope, that's not what I'm saying. It was kind of like a reverse consideration. You didn't need to be pro, but you couldn't be anti because that's just not a good fit. Chuck, I agree with you. You and I are in the minority. God, I've had this fight so many times. Tennessee was wonderful, Keith. Your I'm in love with your chair. He is adorable. Oh my God, he was just so jovial and put everybody at ease. And your vice chair as well. Um, but your chair, like, is just so adorable. But I so agree with you, Chuck, and most people don't agree with us. So, and I'm not saying this against Steve as a chair candidate, though obviously everyone knows I support Angela. But Steve came out with this like fixed region thing that was based upon geography, and I just like threw up in my mouth a little bit because, for instance, New Mexico is very close to Colorado geographically, but we couldn't be farther apart ideologically. And to force two states like that to be in a region together, not only is not fair to those two states, oh my God, it's not fair to the regional representative. You're going to be torn in two different directions all the time. And can you imagine? And I think this is a point that I said in my last video. Oh my God, I'll probably just be here all night. That I think bears restating with this plot that's afoot with Region 7. I think Lucchini is dreaming when he thinks he's going to form a triple region. But let's just pretend that could happen. And let's just pretend I'm going to pull a state out of the air. Actually, I'm just going to make up a state because I don't like people to think I'm talking about them. Let's say there was a little tiny state called Atlantis, which is the example I always give. And it joined this triple region of 7. It's bad enough when you're a small state and you feel like your voice never gets heard because you're dominated by the larger states in your region, when there's only one region rep voting against your will. Imagine being Atlantis in a mega region that rarely agreed with you. You wouldn't just have one rep consistently voting against you, you would have 3. It is dystopian nightmare fuel. I don't know how anyone could think this is a good idea unless you happen to find 30% of states that were really, really ideologically aligned. And I don't think you could get 30%. You might be able to get 20%. And at one point earlier this year, I'm not going to lie, I kind of in my own head was flirting with the idea of proposing to Colorado, let's try to find a super region, until I found out like nobody else agreed with me. Yeah, you would have to specify it in the agreement, Chuck, but none of that is being said. None of that is being said. It could be mitigated in the agreement. But if it's not, the default is what I just said. And like I know, um, that most regional agreements suck. The 5 states that just realigned, uh, Justin, we've already signed a regional agreement. Um, the secretary hasn't notified the LNC yet. We sent it in last week. That's kind of like what this whole thing is about. We have a clause in it that says up until the time of the regional caucus, with a unanimous vote of the 5 states that are part of the region right now, we could admit more. And we are open to admitting a couple more, which was conveniently omitted by Chris Lucchini, who just tried to make it like we were the big baddies that just wanted to orphan everybody. But the regional agreement we authored, for whatever region number we end up being, and I agree with you, Chuck. This doing things ahead of time is not like, I think what Lucchini is doing is sneaky, but the idea of forming ahead of time, I've been in your shoes. I was still negotiating with Washington at the time when I was elected Region 1. But we're calling ourselves Region X right now because we don't know what region number we're going to be. If Alaska ends up joining us, we'll be 1. If not, who the hell knows? I'll send a copy of that draft agreement. Well, it's not draft for us, but you know what I mean. I'll send it to anyone in Word form. If you want to consider altering it to fit your region, I think it's an excellent agreement that protects everybody's rights, including the rights of the regional rep. Because it's not just the states that have rights. And if the state chairs want to remove the regional rep, they are entitled to due process. But we also, in our regional agreement, allow a member recall. So, because a lot of state chairs just ignore crap that's really bothering the members. And we felt very strongly that if the state chairs didn't have the balls to remove a regional rep that was screwing over the region, the members who were eligible to vote for them at the regional caucus, a majority of them by petition should be able to recall them. I don't know if any regional agreements ever had that provision. And I actually think that provision should be in the national bylaws, as I said to Chuck before. I think that's the only way an LNC member should be able to be removed unless they've committed a crime or gross malfeasance, as the more technical term goes. All right, everyone. I am going to take off now. I super enjoyed the conversation. I hope it clarified some things I said before, because I don't want to be misunderstood, though. Haters are going to purposely misunderstand you, but people of good faith won't. I hope y'all have a good night, and you'll be hearing a lot more from me, Chuck, over the next week. I'm going to raise your pay by 200%. All of us get a 200% raise on our party volunteer work. All right, guys, I'm getting loopy. Good night.